これは、とある男と女の絶望へ至る物語である。
All right, you guys, welcome to Hello Lady. We are finally on Saku's route. So excited. I've heard this is where a bunch of stuff happens, and we're already getting a little glimpse of what it's going to be like. This is the story of a certain man and woman's path toward despair. Oh boy, I don't even know what to think about this route because I feel like Saku had a lot of crap happen in Eru's route, and it wasn't even her route yet. There was so much going on. What in the world is this route going to be like? Let's keep going. I want to find out. Flames raged. Golden sparks burned the night as the fire that looked like crimson dragons lit the surrounding forest. The searing wind carried the stench of burned corpses. The nauseating scent obviously signaled death, and not just a single one, but dozens. The deceased had all become sustenance to the flames as they shared a fate with the surrounding mansion. It was late at night. The merciful smile of the slightly waning moon above didn't reach the place. It felt like a replay of the night 7 long years ago.
この灼熱の地獄こそ我々にはふさわしい。なぜならばこの身に流れるは憎悪という名の煮えた鉛。もはや人にあらざるものなるがゆえ。
I mean, are we really starting the route off already killing somebody?
そうは思わないかね。
Only 2 people still retained the ability to move. One was myself, while the other was a pile of rotting meat who sat on the ground, shaking in fear. Dang, so we're starting off the route killing Shinzen already. Shinzen Katsuragi cried and wailed. The sense of refinement that surrounded him a few hours ago had vanished, and the remains burning around us were those of his mansion. His mansion, wealth, and wife had been consumed by fire and were turning to ash without him being able to do anything. Dang, this route is starting off savage. Like, the last route where we kill Tokino, that was pretty quick, but this literally the first few seconds of this route, we're already in here killing somebody. It mirrored the scene from that night well. The moon the moon, shown as blood and flesh, had mixed, filling the air with a nightmarish stench of burning corpses. Their lives, history, future, everything had been thrown into the fire. Red tongues of flame had formed a burning curtain. The many people dashing about had resembled poorly made shadow puppets. Awfully warped, they run in circles before collapsing. Many men he didn't recognize had chased out the people of the house. Even Katsuragi, rifle in hand, had joined in on it, which had been quite the odd sight. He remembered it well. A body that had resembled his father fell to the floor, though he'd found it hard to identify him due to all the damage. He'd seen a few familiar faces. None of them had appeared complete. They had missing hands, legs, heads, and bodies. Try as he might, he failed to find his mother. The red station on the hallway wall might have been her. Or, the red stain. I think I'm too excited. I'm having trouble reading right now. After wandering through the searing vortex as his throat and skin burned, he'd finally found his sister, who had luckily been shot in her chest while asleep, apparently in the middle of a nice dream. Dang, that's sad.
すべてがあの日のまま。7年前、帝を焼き殺したあの世の紅蓮の再現だ。何もかも、そう、一切合切、最大漏らさず、人よの夢に思い出させてくれる。生きり立つような最悪の地獄だ。我々の7年ぶりの再会を祝うには、誠にふさわしいクライマックスだと思わないかね。
The man who'd lost his wealth, status, family, everything, really tried to crawl away like a pathetic pig to protect the only thing he had left, his life. With the heaven-defying darkness banishing crimson sickles of hell behind me, I rhythmically approached the man and grinned. Oh, how amusing! The sight filled my heart with joy. I was quite certain that he had never been so desperate. His heavy stomach bounced as he struggled hard, but he failed to walk or stand up properly. He desperately moved his limbs, but they only took him a meter ahead. I, on the other hand, didn't panic or rush. I approached him like a shark smelling blood or a hunting dog chasing a wounded target. The despair and fear he felt as I took my steps was the greatest offering to the innocents he'd murdered in cold blood.
そんなありえない。まさかまさかまさかお前は生きてるはずがない。死んだ。絶対に確実に死んでるはずだった。帝春水。死んだというのなら不思議なことだ。見るがいい、あの炎を。なすすべなく殺された貴様の兵を。この惨劇は現実だ。夢でも幻でもない。お前の悪夢だ。ならば死者がこれを成したとおっしゃるのか。生きてはいないとっくに死んだ亡骸が聖者のごとくうろつき回ってこのような血と悲惨を表したというのかね。
Dang, Narita's like he's done with their crap, okay? I am so excited to see him like this. I mean, as bad as it is, I actually really like him when he's like being this Avenger and he's just like mercilessly like killing people or like fighting even his friends. I really like to see that. Like, obviously I wouldn't like a person like that, but in reality, but it's cool to see. I feel like that's a big part of his character, is the side of him that wants revenge, and I like seeing him like trying to fulfill that and then having people get in his way and like seeing his reactions to that. I exaggeratedly spread my arms and glared at the struggling, terrified pile of flesh like the star of a play. I looked down on him with eyes as cold as they were cruel, while bearing the grudge of my innocent sister and family, as well as the profound anger built up over the past 7 years. I planned to end this man. Everything had gone according to plan. I had 4 main targets. After Takashi Hanazono, I quickly prepared and executed the second act. Through various means, I'd rid Katsuragi of his wealth and warned him that I would get my revenge, making him hole up in his mansion and fortify it. That was all expected, however, and so I killed the soldiers gathered around him with little effort, leaving only this ugly pile of rotten meat.
生きていたのか。いいや、お前は全くの正解だ。桂木新山。帝春水なる男はとうの昔に死んでいる。このような悲嘆かくも無残な破滅がほんと人のなせる技であろうか。
Touched by the wind, the crimson flames let out a louder roar. The sound of the mansion collapsing as it was consumed by orange and red was akin to the voice of a laughing clown.
そうとお前たちもやってのけた地上の無残あらゆる残酷。それらのすべては人間が生む人間という名の獣が。
Oh, how comical! Humans consumed one another merely by living. How sinful and how natural.
しかして今宵この場にあるのは血の通った聖者にあらず死者にもあらず冥府で安らかな眠りにつくことさえ叶わなかったただの亡霊だ。みんな燃えた燃えた燃えた何もかも全部燃えた燃えて灰に。さよ7年前お前が血と罪に汚れた手でかき集めた財も名誉も消え失せる。なんと慈悲深いことだろう。炎とは善悪の区別なく人しなみに灰と化してくれるのだから。残すところはあと一つ。お前から残された全てを奪う。桂木新山。お前の命と魂を祭壇に捧げてこの第2幕のフィナーレとしよう。 あれは違う。全部黒船に命令されて、俺はそそのかされただけで。
As he faced my oath-sworn arm, the very same type of Luger P08 that had once ended the Mikado's lives, the dying man used his verbose tongue.
なるほど、そうだろう。お前には帝を裏切る知恵も胆力もなかったろう。すべて黒船の仕業だ。それが何だというのかね。
Freaking Narita doesn't care. You helped, whether you wanted to or not.
お前は悪をなした。罪なき命を奪い、財を奪い、欲しいままにした。今さらそれをなかったことにできるはずもあるまい。
That is true.
お前の命は7年前のあの夜に終わっている。この7年の余力がさあ十分堪能しただろう。嫌だ、死にたくない、死にたくない、死にたくない、死にたくない、助けて、誰か、空子、空子、助けて、助けて、助けて。
Hey, as we learned from the last route, Soriko's not even here half the time, so I doubt she's gonna come help you. The pathetic man tried to run. At that point, seeing him like that didn't make me feel anything, so I merely placed my gun against the back of his head.
7年前お前が殺した者たちもきっとそう叫んでいたに違いない。お前は一度でも顧みたか。血で黒い惨劇を欲しいままにし、踏みにじり嘲笑わなかったか。回答など必要ないと。全ては終わったことなのだから。惨劇はあった。その事実の前にあらゆる言葉は無力だ。
Friggin' shut up, you're about to die.
桂木新座、地獄で花園と二人、黒船たちが来るのを待つがいい。
Yeah, you can go with freaking Hanazono.
されば罪には罰を、ふさわしき鉄槌を。
Well, there goes Soriko's dad. It's a great way to start off the route here. Still half crawling, Shinzen Katsuragi stopped moving. The second act had concluded at long last. Before I'd returned to this country, I'd taken many lives and spilled blood over the past 7 years, yet this one seemed to reverberate differently than any other. This bullet had been shot not on behalf of any cause, but my own hatred. I'd done what I had to. The conclusion didn't make me feel all that much. The life of a traitor was far from a match for my anger or hatred. I reminisced about the sky I'd gazed up at long ago. My young fingers had pointed at a rainbow decorating it. Those were days that had long since passed and would never return. Yeah, gosh, this is gonna be a crazy route, killing Shinzen like this so early without Soriko knowing that it was us. Gonna freaking mess her up. Unless she's freaking in the hospital the whole route again. I knew nothing would ever return, including my precious Ruri. Thus, my only choice was to move forward. Either I or them had to drown in a pool of their own blood, so I had to see it through. That was fine by me. 2 acts of the bloody masquerade remained. The lives taken would be a solemn prayer offered on the altar of those who'd faced an unjust end. And the fact that their deaths would push those that remained among the living into the depths of sorrow did not matter in the least.
Narita 様、急いで立ち去った方が、これだけの騒ぎにしてしまいました。さすがに警察も動くことでしょう。
Yeah, you freaking burned the whole building down and killed everyone. Ishia silently appeared from the darkness, her uniform skirt dancing in the wind.
事件が表沙汰になったところで、私はスクール、黒船の城の中だ。手は届くまい。 あの男にとって最悪の敵である私の安全があの男自身の力で守られるというのも気の利いた皮肉ではないかね。
Though either way, I hadn't left any evidence of my involvement. No matter how competent Japanese policemen were, they had no way of linking the incident to me. Isha seemed to find it hard to digest my words, which was a rarity for her, so she looked at me with slightly closed eyes, a sign of consideration.
心配は無用だ。残る仇は二人。
いずれもスクールの重鎮、一筋縄ではいかないでしょう。新山が死んだことで警戒も強めることと思われます。
Yes, that is true. And that's why Narita is going to tell us what his halo is, so we can finally figure out what exactly it is. Because I've been wondering.
黒船の配下には正体不明の化け物もいます。
She refers to the thing that appeared when I targeted Hanazono, the mysterious creature that jumped on a speeding car and tried to kill him for accessing the Academy's secrets. Okay, so someone told me that it was an SSD, and it wasn't like Saku or like somebody that had onslaught syndrome. Because I was wondering ever since I found that out if it was her. Hishi had sniped it off, but when we looked around later, we found no body, blood, or tracks, meaning that it was still at large. Handguns were a different story, but a supersonic rifle bullet had the power to destroy a human body by merely grazing it. If it had truly survived after being shot directly, it was truly a monster.
だからなんだ。黒船がヨシンバ難攻不落の城に立てこもろうと、あまたの魔物を手足に扱おうと、成田真理のやるべきことは変わらない。
Yep, we're gonna do it, baby.
はい、ご主人様。
But I'm freaking excited though, because we're gonna figure out what Saku's doing.
私は夜明け前に学園に戻る。残りの敵はスクールの人間。まずは私が仕掛けてみよう。そちらもいつでも動けるよう準備を整えておいてくれ。
はい、一切怠りはありません。
Still bummed that Hishia can't be in the freaking school with us.
君は完璧なメイドだ。
The best maid. She's best maid, and remember guys, she's best girl too. Hishia's silent bow was, or at least appeared to be, as immaculate as ever. Honestly though, Hishia and then surprisingly Miss Tokino are both best girls. I think Miss Tokino is definitely second, but I think she's made it up my list. A little over 2 weeks had passed since Mitori Kabutoyama left the academy. With both Takashi Hanazono and Shinzen Katsuragi dead, Shin Narita's revenge tragedy had reached its halfway point. 2 targets remained. Slipping by the Academy's neurotics security layer, I snuck back in. Then without anyone noticing, I returned to my room. I washed away the smell of blood, soot, and gunpowder with the help of both burning hot and freezing cold showers. In the mirror, I saw my warped mouth. I was grinning, my heart, which I had once presumed emotionless, filled with a jet black feeling I've never felt before. Had I not felt joy when mercilessly killing my targets? Had I not found bliss upon seeing their frightened faces? I silenced my rolling tower-like emotions. Vengeance was a bloody solemn prayer, as well as a right for the repose of souls. If I found joy in it, the prayer would be reduced to nothing but mere slaughter. The 7 years Shinra Narita had spent on Earth were drenched in layer upon layer of blood and gunpowder. They were days as ugly and vile as mankind itself, etched onto him as he wandered from one chaotic region to another. He could have easily become more beast than man, but there was a rule he set on himself that helped him stay human. He swore to never feel hatred over his own lot in life. It had all begun that night. After many days and nights, he placed the many puzzle pieces together and figured out what had happened 7 years ago. Now, see, I wish I could put the puzzle pieces together and figure out some of the questions I've had about this game, like what is his Halo, or what in the world's gonna happen to Saku in this route. I would love to know, or how he's gonna end up finishing all of this. Is he gonna end up killing everybody in the end, and then we're gonna end the game? Because he's kind of already killed. I think it was Soriko's route. I don't know. He killed everyone in one of the routes, or just about killed them. So. I'm curious to know what's going to happen. I've pretty much figured out everybody else's halos, which is nice. They finally revealed what Saku's was, which is a little overpowered, if I might say so. Oh, I should probably keep reading, huh? He failed to understand the truth behind the tragedy as a child, but once he traveled beyond the sea, he followed the threads and thoroughly investigated it. An outsider named Tokuno Yomase had invited Kurofune, Shinzen Katsuragi, and Takashi Hanazono to join her, but then they betrayed and slaughtered the Mikudos for being a nuisance. Only a single person had survived, Shinsui Mikado. Kurofune himself had shot him, but fortunately, or unfortunately, it wasn't fatal. Shinri Narita covered the throbbing wound on his right hand. The scar there was from Kurofune's near-fatal bullet. Kurofune saw Shinsui Mikado as a sample who had happened to survive the fire. He had him bound and carried off somewhere to be used as a precious specimen. He thought it was an inevitability. However, Kurofune had failed to consider something. In many cases, HMIs underwent ascensions in extreme situations. Threats to their lives and powerful emotions were prime triggers for that. The Mikudos were a line of hereditary HMIs, but due to the thinning of their bloodline, neither he nor his sister had a halo, at least not until that night. Like Tokuno Yomase had explained in her lecture, when faced with death, Shinsui developed a power. Without even thinking of the consequences of his actions, he tried to escape the plane transporting him. Despite his wounded body, the memory of his sister had spurred him into action. He recalled the sight of her body burning in the mansion, as well as his hatred towards Kurofune, who had shot him. He truly believed he couldn't let it end like that. The plane carrying Shinsui Mikado crashed somewhere in Central Asia. No one could possibly have survived dying twice. Both Kurofune and Tokuno Yomase thought that all had been reduced to ash. Without a certain someone, Shinsui Mikado would have become a true revenant. He didn't know the man's name, for he hadn't even mentioned it even once. The man who had saved Shinsui Mikado was an old wraith. Or wrath. I don't know. He was also a legend of sorts. He'd taken countless lives, and he was a mythical individual who had been involved in regime changes, conflicts, acts of terrorism, and coup d'etats all around the world. He laughed, though cackled often. Despite killing and ruining countless people, he showed no remorse or shame as he traveled around the world. However, the old man knew far too much, which is why people in power had feared him and distanced themselves from him. He'd lost the ability to return to his homeland, so he had no choice but to live in a dry wasteland of sand and rock. He'd left wealth all across the world. The riches he'd gathered through bloody means took various forms that were enough to buy a small country. He was all alone in the world, with no family to speak of. He might have had friends or lovers at some point, but they had long since abandoned him. He was the human version of a withered tree, dragging his weakened limbs as he awaited his fate, to die without leaving anything behind. Shinsui Mikado was the last person he'd met. Miraculously, the boy had survived the plane crash. Facing death twice and surviving both times was unlikely by itself, but then he'd heard footsteps approaching him. He cried at how powerless he was and wailed in anger. Such injustices had happened, but he had no means to set things right, or even after being blessed with 3 miracles, he was fated to die without having accomplished anything. There was no justice in this world. His innocent sister had died, and as he grew certain that he would die before anyone heard his cries and curses, his body had lifted up. It had seemed to almost become weightless. The man was strange. He was the kind of person who would have seemed at home sitting cross-legged on a boulder in a stream while watching the sunlight leak through the trees as he drank fine sake. With a face laden with wrinkles as deep as his sorrows, he slightly opened the eyes that almost blended with them and said, "You know Japanese? Tell me if you do. If you don't, then do something about it. If you want to die, I can kill you right now. If you got anything more to do, I can take you in. Though it's easier to just die, if you ask me." Shinsui had cried out his choice without even a moment of hesitation. What had followed was probably the last whim of a man who had known nothing but killing all his life. "Yep, you're a scumbag. You won't become like me, but I can get you about halfway there." Merely remembering it upset Shinri Narita, but the vile man had led him around various areas. He taught him a means of survival and a way to overcome old difficulties. After the years of endless blood, steel, and gunpowder, the old man had passed away as peacefully as a collapsing tree in winter, leaving Shinri Narita as his hair. The world changes, that's just how it is. What's the point of being scared of that? Those words were his pet saying, and do whatever the hell you want. Those words were his last. The techniques, knowledge, and vast wealth I'd inherited from him had become the foundation of my revenge.
ようやくここまで来た。
After harmonizing my body and mind with the breathing of Geb, I silenced the dark urges within me. The desire to enjoy the murder surged within me. I couldn't deny it, and I wouldn't. That too was a part of me, after all. However, that did not mean I planned to let it control me. The academy was under the wing of Kurofune Mikado. Shinri Narita was well aware of what that meant. The place was akin to a spider's web. It placed me close to his throat, but at a slight mistake meant my demise. My body shook, trembling with excitement. Standing on the stage was akin to wielding a double-edged blade, and that only served to embolden my efforts. Kurofune Mikado's life neared its end. I planned to take his life as payment for what he'd done 7 years ago. Well, okay. I kind of see where we're going. I like that he kind of explained a little bit of his backstory, finally. Like, we kind of know what happened in between the mansion burning down and then today. I just kind of wished we would have, like, got to see what this person looked like. I'm kind of curious now. And we still haven't met somebody yet. We go into the settings here. Yeah, see, there's still an empty head. Like, we haven't met somebody. I walked out into the living room late at night to calm my raging emotions. That night was a rare moment where I had trouble merely waiting for morning to arrive in my room. Was it my boiling blood, or had my mind frayed due to the rage? The impulse making me restless was black, stuck to me like mud, and released smoke even when I closed my eyes. One of the walls in the dark room was the glass entrance. Like the ones in our rooms, it had no curtains because it was cutting-edge technology that became opaque with just the push of a button. A slightly waning moon in the academy showered in its light. The light falling down like marine snow dimly lit the buildings, making it look like they were underwater. As I entered the living room, I heard soft breathing on the sofa and instantly subdued my presence. I silently looked towards the source and found Saku Otonashi sleeping on the soft sofa, curled up like a kitten.
こんなところで何をしているのかね。眠るなら部屋のベッドの方がいい。初夏とはいえ風邪をひいてしまう。
What do you mean? Sometimes sleeping on the couch is the most comfortable thing in the world. He seemed to be sleeping peacefully, so I considered leaving her be. However, I decided against it because it wasn't proper for the insignia to nap in such an open area. I lightly shook her, making her eyes open her eyes and get up on the sofa.
珍しいわね、こんな夜遅くに。喉でも乾いたの？
You know, I was just killing Sorko's dad. I mean, I was thirsty for blood. Our beloved insignia looked at me with drowsy eyes. She didn't seem fully awake.
そんなところだが、時間を問題にするなら、君こそ何をしているのかね。明かりもつけずにリビングで居眠りとは。
居眠り？今何時？
When I told her the time, her shoulders drooped, making it look like she had messed up somehow.
コーヒー飲んだら戻るつもりだったのに。いつの間にか寝ちゃってたんだ。だらしのない。やだな、最近。時々記憶が途切れるし。体調は維持できてるはずなのに。
I don't know, you better not be having the onslaught syndrome.
たまにはそういう姿も悪くないな。特に制服でない君をこうしてゆっくり眺める機会は珍しいからね。やはり君の訪問は神の父と呼ぶのがふさわしい。
I don't know, she definitely has some of the biggest.
かっこつけて、そんな変態なこと言うな。天然性の変態。
Apparently, her mind had caught up to the situation. She sat on the sofa properly and stretched. It emphasized her curves and full breast, making for an excellent sight. Stop paying so much attention. You're too observant.
絶品だ。満点を出そう。
A perfect score, huh?
あからさまにジロジロ見てないで、少しは悪びれてこっそりやりなさい。
What if he does it in the open and doesn't feel bad about it? She threw a cushion at
悪
me.
いことをしていないのだから悪びれる必要がどこにあるのかね。私は美の信奉者として敬うべきを敬っているだけだ。
敬うべきって？
No, don't ask him that. He's gonna go into more detail now.
豊満なる巨乳だ。
Another cushion flew at me. Wow, what a surprise.
まったく
Didn't see that coming.
あなたと話してると調子が狂うっていうか頭がおかしくなるわ。
秀ですぎた才能とはつくづく世間の理解を得られないものなのだと思い知るよ。
Supreme talent, huh? Is that what we call it?
ところで私は寝苦しさに起きてきたのだが、君は別にそういうわけではないのだろう。どちらかといえば最近の君は寝不足気味のようだしね。
Yeah, what are you up to, Saku? What's going on?
どうしてわかるの？
Her eyes widened in surprise, but my observation was nothing special. It was all a matter of attentiveness. Anyone who saw her every day would have noticed whether they wanted to or not.
よく眠り、よく食べ、よく学ぶ。あるべきが乱れれば人は体に現れる。苦境を耐えられるのと何も問題がないのは別なのだよ。私のような鍛錬を積んでいればともかく、つまり最近寝不足の君のお肌は荒れ気味だ。毎朝のメイクでうまく隠しているようだがね。
She immediately pouted like a child who had just been caught in mischief. That face made the insignia of the crowns look like a normal girl her age instead of the strongest HMI at the academy. The all too human warmth seemed to almost make the stench of blood around me dissipate. Before I knew it, my dark urges had subsided.
さっき記憶が飛ぶとか言っていたようだが、過労ではないのかね。
I don't know, sounds like you're going crazy.
聞こえてたの？もう油断のならない。
I mean, you kind of said that out loud, didn't you?
君は筆頭として普段から多くの責務をこなし、多忙を極めている。まして現在はクラウンが定数を書いたままだ。無理をしすぎではないのかね。
Yeah, I don't know. You need to take better care of yourself because I don't want you going crazy again like you did before.
ああ、
That was kind of
せっかく入
scary.
れたのにすっかり冷めちゃった。もう一杯新しいコーヒー作るけど、成田もいる？
いただこう。
I wonder if she's as good as Arrow at making coffee. Saku vanished into the kitchen, linked to the living room. I heard dishes, the server mumbling, boiling water, sounds that were signs of an everyday life. Eventually, she returned with 2 cups.
どうぞ。
感謝を。
I took the coffee Saku made for me.
襟好み激しそうな成田の口に合うかしら？
No, apparently not, because we were drinking like, what, like soldier coffee?
これでも私はコーヒーにはうるさいたちなのだよ。
No, you are not. Shut up.
それは初耳だわ。
ごまかされないうちに先ほどの話をしておこう。何のための夜更かしかは尋ねないが、もう少し自分の体をいたわってはどうかな。
みんな大変よ。ミトリがいなくなった分、一人一人のやるべきことはどうしても多くなるし。
Ooh, I wonder if we're gonna find out more about what happened.
それに、私の負担をいたわるつもりがあるのなら、どこかの誰かさんがいつまでも心情とかなんとか言ってないで欠員埋めてくれると助かるんだけど。
That is true. He could be helping out more. Freaking Taigi could be helping out more too.
残念ながらそれとこれとは別の話だ。
まあいいけど。でもあれ以来、玉尾はどうかしちゃったみたい。すぐにいなくなって講義もよく抜け出してるし。
友人がいなくなってサクは傷ついていないのかね。
私はクラウンの筆頭。そんなことで心騒がせてはいられません。
Saku was honest to a fault. Try as she might to wear the mask of the insignia, she failed to hide her true feelings about her friend's disappearance. Not everyone saw it as a merit, but Shinri Narita found it very likable.
ノーブルたるもの、いかなる時も心乱すなかれか。筆頭の責任感と気高さに感服する。
見透かしたこと言うのはやめて。
I tried the coffee without any sugar or milk. It was very strong and quickly filled my mouth with a mix of sourness and bitterness.
気負いのない良い味だ。
My honest review made Saku stop mid-gulp and make an odd face. She seemed both bashful and troubled at the same time. Keeping that expression, she looked around the living room.
気負いすぎているのかと思っていたが、そうではないようだ。
それは成田に感謝しておく。
私にかね。
Watashi?
あなた前に言ったでしょ、肩に力が入りすぎてるって。
そんなこともあったな。
Still looking away, Saku nodded.
人の範たらんノーブル、その範たるものの範たるエトワール。うん、成田の言う通りだわ。自分がどうにかしなくちゃって思い込んで、いろいろなものが見えなくなってた。あのね、私の両親はごく普通の人だった。ハローどころか何も特別なところなんてない。普通に働いて、笑ったり時々泣いたりしながら精一杯やってた。
Honestly, that's the best way to live, you know? Sometimes you just gotta make the most of things. Only moonlight brightened the room, so we couldn't make out each other's faces that well. That was probably what let her open up about these things. She slowly drank her coffee and spoke of her previously unknown past.
不満なんて何もなかったわ。ただ私がアセンションを起こした時、ちょっとした事件があって、その多少の行き違いはあったんだけど。
ご両親は君を心配しておられたのだろう。思い合ってもすれ違うことはある。肉親といっても何もかも通じ合えるわけはないからね。
私は本当に愛されてたと思う。スクールに行くって決めた時も泣いてくれて、でも私の好きにしていいって言ってくれた。スクールには開設されたばかりの頃からずっといるんだ。最古さんの一人ってわけ。ここに全国から人が集まってくるのもずっとそばで見てた。
I do remember them saying that Saku was like one of the first students. I think that's pretty cool.
ある意味自分の家みたいなもので、それにいいのか悪いのか、いつの間にかエトワールの筆頭になんて選ばれてて、その
敬われていた。
恐れられてもいたけど。
Yeah, I could see that. Especially with your freaking Halo. It's pretty
仕方ない
strong.
けど、私のハローはなんていうか、まあ特殊だから怖がられるのも無理ないんだけど。
Yeah, you're King Lear the Third.
私もっと強くなりたかった。
There was no doubt in her promise. Her words carried power that could stand firm before any storm.
筆頭って呼ばれるのにふさわしい自分になりたくて、脇目も振らずに必死で頑張った。私はそのエルやタマオみたいな先天性型の HMI じゃないから、いろいろな経験が足りてないし、ニトリやスラコみたいないいとこのお嬢様じゃないからわからないことも多くて。
普通の家の生まれというのを気にしていたのかね。
ああ、気にしてないつもりだったけど、やっぱり引っかかってたのかな。だってほら、クラウンのメンバーで私だけ普通の家の出身だから。
I don't know why, but her situation makes me think of like Harry Potter, where she's like this extraordinary wizard, but her family is like Muggleborns.
その分努力しなくっちゃって、いつの間にかそれしか見えなくなってたんだな。
You're a wizard, Saku.
生まれや血筋を気にするなというつもりはないよ。人間は生来のではなく環境に学び完成されていく。生まれた時の差は一生ついて回る。だがそれだけのことだ。進むべき道を決めるのは自分自身だ。力が足りていないと思うのなら埋めるか諦めるかするしかない。だからサク、君のやってきたことは 間違ってはいない。
何を偉そうに。私ずっと筆頭だったし、怖がられたりしてたし、成田みたいに平気で突っかかってきたり偉そうな口聞くようなやつ今まで一人もいなかったんですけど。
I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I think that's because Narita's probably the one person who's strong enough to face her. I mean, obviously he kind of got his butt whooped a little bit, on the last route. But I think if the conditions are right, he's probably the only one who can face her. I mean, maybe Tamao too, but no, not really. Oddly enough, she spoke of those memories of conflict with a hint of cheer in her voice.
すると私は特別ということかね。うん。さっき私に感謝すると言っていた気もするな。
I think Narita is special to her in the sense that he's the only one who is bold enough to just grab her boobs, shortly after meeting her and saving her life.
いや、礼など不要だとも。だが、君の放慢に顔を埋めても良いのであれば、喜んでそうしよう。
Can you tell I've gotten so used to him just saying these really dumb things? It doesn't even shock me anymore.
殺すぞ。
筆頭殿にはもう少し心の余裕が必要なようだ。君があるべき自分を思い出したというならそうなのだろうね。今の君は初めて出会った頃の君の何倍も気高く、そして美しい。
いきなりそんな恥ずかしいセリフ。
There's very little things that Narita says that embarrass himself.
人間の価値の本質において生まれや血筋は些細だよ。
Honestly, I think Eru's the only person he's ever gotten embarrassed around, and that's kind of because of her halo. Not really her personally.
人のありようは自分自身で決められるってこと？
Yeah, absolutely. What do you mean?
人生とは不平等だ。
Kind of, yeah.
幸福
Sometimes.
な者がいる傍らに生まれながら死を決定づけられている者がいる。選び取れる道は限られている。人の一生より長い夜にとらわれたまま荒野を行くしかないこともある。この世という舞台の上で我々は神の降る際に右往左往する哀れな駒でしかない。しかし、ただ一つ運命の無残にも宿命の嵐にも立ち向かうための力を最初から与えられている。
I don't know. I don't know why God rolled the dice and decided that I would like visual novels.
意志だ。
意志で世界を変えられる？
You're saying you change the world if you wish for it. I mean, you can start with yourself.
意志ではなく意志だよ。心は意のままにもならないものだ。全く意味での自由など人間にはない。我々は自由足らんと意志することができるだけだ。たとえ今日世界に敗れようと、明日は打ち破ると誓える意志。この瞬間、世界が終わってしまうとしても、歩みをやめないという意志。それだけが真実の意味での自由だ。意志こそが人間の最も大きな価値だ。私はそう信じているよ。
Yeah, I definitely feel like free agency is your greatest gift you have. I mean, you might even say it's the only thing you have is your ability to choose for yourself. Because ultimately, nothing anybody else does can take away your free agency, right? You always have the option of choosing what you want to do for yourself. Now, obviously, there's situations where you're pretty limited on what decisions you can make, but you can always make your own decisions, right? Saku suddenly thought of something.
ねえ、納得のいかないことはどうする？
Well, you gotta frickin' figure out what's wrong. And ask me that question while looking straight into my eyes.
私ならば立ち向かうだろう。
I replied without hesitation. The answer was a core aspect of Shinri Narita's existence.
あなたならそうでしょうね。
If only all of us could just face our problems head on, that would be nice.
相手は自分よりも強いかもしれない。自分のやろうとしていることが他の何かを壊してしまうかもしれない。自分以外の誰かを傷つけるかもしれない。
You're speaking to the expert on that, actually. We know a lot about destroying other people's lives and harming them.
その答えなら私に問うまでもないだろう。君はとっくに知っている。
Saying, what a deflect. As a noble in the truest sense, not by blood or status, Saku Otonashi surely understood.
人はそれでも生きねばならない。
Just gotta keep on swimming.
苦しさも嘆きも悲惨も無残もこの苦海に果てはない。それは特別でも何でもない。当たり前だ。この瞬間にも何の意味もなく何一つ残さず死んでいく命がある。突き詰めれば我々の全員が名も知らぬ誰かの死に遠くどこかで加担している。
I mean, I don't know about that one.
そのありさまを残酷と呼ぶならば、世界の正しさこそ残酷だ。正しくないという正しさ以外の何もない。その矛盾の中を我々は生き続けなければならないのだ。歓喜も憤怒も悲哀も希望もまだ見ぬ明日へつなぐ何かも形になるのは生きればこそだ。生徒は迷うものだ。過ちを犯し、時に敗北さえするものだ。そして死とは敗れることではない。諦めることなのだ。
I mean, maybe I'm just not following all of his rhetoric here, but I mean, I do agree with some of it, right? Like, I do think like a part of living life is learning and making mistakes and having failures, because those all will help you to know better next time, or at least that's the hope, right? Like, there's a difference between like learning and making mistakes and making wrong choices, right? Like, if you think of a baby, like, would you blame a baby for not knowing how to be a proper human being? Like, they will obviously make mistakes because they're learning and growing. But as you get older and you know better, that's when it starts becoming you not doing the right thing, right? Like, if your parents, you're a young kid and they're telling you, hey, like, don't color on the walls, and then you color on the walls. Okay, well, now you know not to color on the walls, and if you do it again, they're gonna say, hey, that's not just you learning, that's you freaking messing up. You should have known better.
私は嘘もつくが、自分の誇りと魂は偽りたくない。信じるところを果たし、輝けるものを見出すために。
Yeah, Narita is a very driven person. He definitely has certain things he wants to accomplish in life. I just wonder, and the game's kind of asked this question before, what's going to happen when Narita ends up fulfilling that dream, right? And he ends up getting revenge. Like, what is his goal going to be then? I feel like because he's so driven by revenge and rage and all these emotions, what's going to happen to him after that? Who is he going to be? I just don't see how he's going to keep living on like that unless he ends up falling in love in something. But he seems like a person who definitely needs something to focus all of his energy and to make a goal in his life. He needs something like that.
輝けるもの?
I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of a person that's more like laid back and just kind of lets things go with the flow compared to him, who's like actively engaged in trying to do something all the time. I find it hard to relate, I guess. I mean, I definitely have things I want to do in life, but not to like the intensity that he does.
昔思い出すのも抱きしたくなるろくでなしが、そんな似合いもしないロマンチストなことを一度だけ漏らしたことがある。命とは輝けるものを探す巡礼のようだと。
Those words had sounded like a momentary mistake as they flowed out of his mouth. I'd completely forgotten the exchange until mere moments ago, and it was a wonder why it had come back to me all of a sudden. Saying it made my heart feel strange.
そのためにも私はなすべきことをなさねばならない。
So life is a pilgrimage to find the things that shine. You know, I can see that. That's a pretty nice way of putting it. I mean, there's a lot of things in life that are just crap. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. But you know, there are some moments that shine, and you gotta find what makes you happy. What things shine in your life. You know, obviously for a lot of people, and probably most of you watching, it's visual novels, right? Like, I feel like visual novels are something that people find that makes, you know, it shines, right? It's something that you can find meaning out of and enjoyment or entertainment, or just a way to kill time, right? But you know, there's a lot of stuff I don't like doing taxes. That doesn't shine to me. I don't like doing taxes, but I'd rather play a visual novel.
成田って変態なのにごく稀にまともなこと言うから困るわ。
You know, Saku, you've said this a few times throughout the game. Like, Narita says most of the time really interesting stuff that you should really pay attention to. Occasionally, he talks about stuff that I don't understand or don't agree with, or he talks about being a pervert, you know, whatever. I don't care about that. But most of the time, he actually has some interesting insights to things, and you should really pay attention, Saku. I hope you do in this route. Saku opened her eyes wide and said something truly rude.
少しも困らない。ついでに指摘するのだが、私は変態ではなく美の信仰者なのだ。間違いないよ。
I don't know about that one. You can kind of be a little bit of both.
はあ
I heard Saku raise her voice above my head. I found myself burying my face in her breast. I was motorboating her, so to speak.
なんということ
Oh my gosh.
いけない。これほどの魔性の巨乳とは思わなかった。私の鋼の好奇心と意志に歯向かって体が勝手に動いてしまうとは。
You need to bridle your passions, my guy. You're a little bit too straightforward, okay? Using my hands and face, I enjoyed the mythical fullness and perkiness. Exquisite, truly wonderful. I wouldn't have minded if the world ended at that very moment. I don't know, if you keep doing that, your world will end.
今すぐ死ね
Saku, hit him. Do it. Saku attacked me from above at a sharp angle. She was no pro, however, so I had no trouble seeing it coming. Unfortunately, I couldn't bring myself to part with the joy of the full breast, so I took the blow and collapsed. You're so dumb. I'm just glad somebody finally got a hit on him.
ああもう全部台無しまったくそのまま朝まで倒れてろ
Visibly upset, Saku pulled out a small metal case. I saw some candy inside. They didn't seem expensive. The design made them look like generic treats, which didn't suit the insignia of the academy in the least. Apparently, Saku liked them a lot. I often saw her sneakily enjoying them during breaks.
深夜に甘味は美容の天敵ではないかね。
Yeah, I hope you're gonna brush your teeth after this. Still collapsed, I humbly asked that question, making her glare at me.
ストレスの緩和に甘みが必要なのまったく一体誰のせいだと
I mean, not mine. What the frick? I've made your life so much better since I got here. So much more exciting, right?
じゃあね私もう寝ます
Alright, good night. I silently snuck up on her as she tried to leave. Oh my gosh, she's not stopping. And embraced her tight, making her let out an amusing high-pitched voice.
静かにおとなしくじっとしていたまえ。すぐに済む。
Gosh, that sounds like some stuff my friends said when I was younger. They'd be like, just let it happen. I had this friend that would like give me hugs all the time, and she would just say that. Really awkward because as a teenager, I was not a very outgoing person. I'll say that.
静かにってだっていきなりすぎ
納得できないことを追うのはやめたまえ。
What was that supposed to mean? I whispered that into Saku's ear, careful that the security didn't capture
一
it.
体何の話を
Oh, he's actually being serious here. Okay.
君が近づいているのはドラゴンの王だ。人間一人程度たやすく消し飛ばしてしまう。
成田あなた何を知っているの
We know a lot of things.
これは単に友人としての気遣いだよ。 ここしばらく夜更かしまでしてサクがやっているかもしれないことへの。
But this is what I like about Narita. He can be like completely jokingly, just joking about breasts and stuff, and then he goes like and flips a switch, and instantly he's like a more, uh, you know, nicer guy, and he's like really looking out for her. Like he notices all the small details, which is like such a nice friend. He's a very interesting character, very hot and cold at times when it comes to what he's focusing on. She quit trying to get away and froze.
あなたなら相手が竜でも虎でも挑むんでしょ？
Of course.
君は一人ではない。スクールの筆頭だ。君の両肩に背負われた全てを捨てていくのかね。
それは。
Saku fell silent.
今夜はもう休みたまえ。朝までまだいくらか時間はある。サク、君には休息が必要だ。
Yeah, and go brush your teeth.
ええ。そうするわ。おやすみなさい。
Oyasumi.
おやすみ。
Saku walked up the stairs, clearly appearing hesitant about something. It looked as though her shoulders had drooped. Perhaps the way I spoke to her was unfair, but I truly didn't want her to face more danger. Saku Otonashi was most likely investigating Mitori's disappearance. Saku, as I knew her, would never have blindly accepted the Academy's official words. She would certainly have tried to find out the truth. Ishia had investigated the matter and found that Mitori Kabutoyama had died of an illness shortly after leaving the Academy. An illness! An ending so plain it seemed like a part in a bad theatrical farce. Mitori's disappearance was surely connected to the dark underbelly of the Academy. It was truly the tale of a dragon, and carelessly chasing it required far more than just one life. If Saku Otonashi was wholly serious, I doubted she planned to reconsider based on my words, but I saw no harm in warning her of the consequences.
しまった。別れ際
Oh
に
my
胸を揉んでおくのだった。
Narita, please, just let us have a good moment, okay? Why do you need to mention that? The things he thinks of. Dear me, I was so focused on my words I forgot my quest for beauty. Clearly I wasn't at my best that night. Or you were trying to be a considerate person. You know, you could consider that. Thus, morning came again. Done with my daily exercise, I went out on an early walk for a change of pace. Professionals generally avoided patterned lifestyles, since that made it easy to predict their actions and trap them. It was a clear summer morning. The vibrant sky was akin to a canvas of cobalt, while the remnants of the silence of the night cooled my morning thoughts. I casually walked around the garden, thoroughly checking the edges of the lawn and below the trees, just to be sure. I also looked around the dorm.
やはりといったところか。
I'd gotten curious about the identity of the person clad in black. I'd encountered her on one of my nightly outings, and her skill greatly impressed me. I knew she was a woman. She tried to hide it, but I could tell by her movements and form. She was also young. Additionally, she had the skill to sneak by the Academy's superb security and had downright inhuman physical prowess. Few fit all those criteria. Considering the tightness of the security, she likely resided within its walls, which made her a high-level HMI. Among the 200 HMIs of the Academy, those with such immense physical prowess were few and far between. Is this going to be the route where we just find out everything? We're like, okay, we know what their Halo is, we know what their Halo is. And though it was entirely possible to hide a Halo, you couldn't fully hide your skill, for that was something you had to been etched onto you and became a part of you. You didn't even have to look at athletes to know that. Even something as simple as walking differed in effectiveness and results depending on how skilled you were, and it showed in your everyday life whether you liked it or not.
これもか。
Yeah, I think the athletes that you can tell are like the most skilled are the ones that walk like JoJo characters. No, I'm just kidding. The trees surrounding the dorm had traces that no normal person would have ever noticed. They were footprint-like marks at the 3 meter height. They'd likely been left there as the person traveled up and down over and over. From the surface to the tree to the dorm's roof, those movements might have seemed nonsensical, but they were actually done to avoid the security layer. The amount of precision made it clear that it was work of a professional. That meant their true identity was. Upon hearing and sensing someone approach, I cut my thoughts short, but in a second I started pretending to be a mere student enjoying some morning exploration.
今朝は早いね、成田。
Hey, what's up, Taigi? Like I thought the person was Taigi, the seventh Etola who had joined us right as Mitori Kapitoyama left half a month ago. While I seemed to be a student merely exploring, Taigi appeared more like a proud artist, wandering around in search of inspiration.
大義こそ今朝は早いな。
早いというよりも、今が帰りなんだ。理事長、父に呼び出されていてね。
Ooh, okay. Having a spicy early morning meeting.
何やら悪巧みかね。
Taigi appeared unfazed by my blatant provocation. A discovery I made from his attitude surprised me. This man was generally detached and didn't care about anything, but suddenly he seemed somewhat sad.
何事かあったのか。
わかるかい？これでも、隠し事は得意なつもりだったのに。君には、どういうわけかお見通しらしい。
相性というやつだろう。そういうこともある。それで何があった？
Oh, so Narita, you and Taigi are compatible, huh? That's so. Maybe the true end is where we end up getting with Taigi. It's gonna be something crazy like that.
成田になら先に話しておいてもいいだろう。昨夜不幸があった。空子の家族に。僕は早朝から彼女にそれを伝えなければならない。正直、気が重いよ。
Oh, it's about that, huh? I forgot. The news didn't surprise me in the least. After all, Shinru Narita had crafted that very tragedy. I knew Kurofune was perceptive enough to notice that Shinzon's death was a message from an Avenger, and I'd also expected him to call Taigi to discuss their next steps. What I didn't expect, however...
空子を起こしてきた方がいいのかね。
なるべくショックは与えたくないんだ。そうでなくても、HMI というのは繊細だ。
That is true.
空子が起きてくるまで待っているよ。
Was Taigi's honesty. There was no falsehood or pretense in his words. Taigi actually grieved the tragedy that had fallen over Soriko. Yeah, because Taigi's not a crazy, bad human being. Taigi and Soriko were childhood friends. Under normal circumstances, his grief would have appeared natural. However, Taigi was Kurofune's son. Him joining the Etoilas and entering the dorm was no doubt his decision. To the academy, Soriko and the other crowns, and everything else were just pieces on the board. Or perhaps Soriko Katsuragi and Taigi were actually close enough to be considerate of each other, much like they had been 7 years ago. Well, yeah, I'm sure he remembers.
それは。
I noticed him holding something that didn't seem to fit him.
ん？ああ、これはつい持ってきてしまったんだね。
Oh, what is it? I'm curious. It's a small paper crane. Oh yeah, he did used to make those, huh? I remember we learned that as he was looking through some documents. Not much paper was used for it. It seemed to have been made with used paper, so it looked utterly ordinary. I still remembered my late sister making those quite often. She'd always made cranes, never flowers or animals. She'd claimed all smiles that she liked things with wings. Whenever she started making them, I and the other girl eventually grew bored and stopped, but she continued the job for ages. Only the male childhood friend had ever remained behind to assist her.
それで、時の先生とも相談したんだが、空子はしばらく休学させることになるだろう。
So she's going to be missing this route too, is what I'm hearing. He placed the origami crane in his pocket.
本人の確認も取っていないのに急な話だな。
2週間か3週間か、彼女が落ち着くまでの期間だよ。昨夜、空子の実家が火災を起こして、両親とも亡くなった。家には戻せないから、しばらくは講義を休ませて、
Oh my
研究棟で
gosh.
療養させるつもりだ。
It's literally going to be a repeat of the last route. That's literally what happened to her. She was just
両
stuck.
親ともかね。
This game.
ああ、死んだ。空子は、きっと両親の死を悲しむだろう。
Well, screw him. Freaking Tokino's more of a parent to her than they were. Indeed, Soriko would be saddened by the news and shed tears, but even her grief wasn't enough to shake Shinri Narita's resolve.
空子ならここにいたいと言うかもしれない。
Sorko seemed extremely considerate of others, so it was likely that she wouldn't want to trouble
そう
anyone.
だね。事情を説明したのはそれもある。成田、君は空子のことがよく分かっている。
You could say her and I were close.
とても強情なところがあってね。
昔から
だけど今回は
分かった。ことがことだ。確かに空子には休養が必要になるだろう。私も空子を解き伏せる力になろう。
Dang, that's a little messed up. The person who, killed her parents is trying to console her.
感謝するよ、成田。
After forming a fake, relaxed smile, he gave me as sharp a look as though to gauge me. His gaze felt akin to a poisoned dagger, which conflicted with the consideration he'd shown for Soriko. I merely pretended that I didn't notice it.
しかし、一夜にして両親とも失ってしまうとは、まさにこの世は投げられたコインのことした。不幸はどこに潜んでいるか知れたものではない。
Wow, really rubbing this one in, aren't you?
彼のことを知っているかい？
After a pause, Taigi pulled out his device and showed me a photo of the man. I did know him. It was Takashi Hanazono, one of the foolish traders and the star of the first act of my revenge tragedy.
この男がどうかしたのかね。空子の件と関係が。
まだ何とも言えないんだが、気にかかることがあって調べているんだよ。成田、見覚えはあるかい？
What did Taigi intend to accomplish by showing me that photo? Expression, breathing, mannerisms. I felt Taigi measure each and every one of my reactions. I thought it was best to assume that he suspected me. Taigi had already joined the Etoiles due to their suspicion of an infiltrator within the academy. From then on, I had to walk a tightrope akin to a spider silk. If I showed him a single action that didn't fit the situation, his suspicions would transform into convictions.
遠目に見たことはある。学園の周りをうろついていた。
And so I played a role, melting into the role of Shinri Narita. I continued the laughable act.
一度だけ見た相手をよく覚えているね。
この場所の空気にそぐわぬ男だ。忘れようもない。エルにも尋ねてみてはどうかね。ちょうど一緒にいた。彼女もおそらく覚えているだろう。
確かに。彼はいかにもそぐわない男には違いないね。
Just as Taigi was suspicious of Shinri Narita was also suspicious of Taigi. Was he an agent of Kurofune, or...
その男がどうかしたのかね。
死んだ。いや、殺された。
Dun dun dun. I had no idea.
そして、空子の両親も殺された。
Yes, we did know that actually, Taigi. You kind of just told us.
殺されたとは、なんとも大事だ。では、その男の死と空子の両親の死に何か関係があると。
I'm really surprised he's telling all this to us. I wonder if he really suspects us.
かもしれない。
真実は遥かに遠く、未だ人の手にはなしか。この残酷な世界ほど謎めいた場所は他になく、我々はいつもありえない真実を求めて叫び狂う。
詩人だね。
Takashi Hanazono's corpse must have remained hidden, yet Taigi claimed that he had been killed. Taigi wasn't the type to half-fake his approach either, which meant he was already certain of the enemy's existence. Taigi and Kurofune were backed by the powers of the 200 HMIs at the academy. If those powers were wielded well, they could acquire proof that was out of normal humans' reach. I had to remain ever vigilant. However, I knew I wouldn't be able to hide my identity for long. Sooner or later, they would discover the truth. But it was far too early for that. If Shinri Narita was exposed already, all my work would be rendered moot. Kurofune Mikudo was cunning and careful. Approaching and defeating him wasn't easy. In addition to that, he was backed by a giant community that was above all laws. They were fearsome and had a far reach, yet seemed to have no solid shape. That was the reason why Shinri Narita hadn't defeated Kurofune yet. After betraying the Mikudos, Kurofune had used his wealth and connections he'd acquired to become a member of that mysterious group. I'd heard that there was even an important part of the few people leading it, who were known as the Committee. Gosh, this is sounding like some Steins Gate crap. The Academy was Kurofune's stronghold, his artful masterpiece and a fortress that kept his enemies at bay. However, no matter how great a fortress, it was weak to attacks from the inside. The sense of protection that came from having large walls made people lower their guards, and I planned to take advantage of that. Yeah, that's pretty much what happened in Attack on Titan. And so I had to keep my identity hidden while I looked for a means to corner him.
死はどこにでもあり、突然に訪れ去っていく。彼らの儚い終わりに哀れみを抱こう。
そしてどんな死も等しく無残で悲劇的だ。ムクロの目が開くことはなく、彼らの祈りが花咲くこともない。
Uh-oh.
成田は死の重さを知っているかい？
These feel like some very targeted questions here. I did. I'd only survived the tragedy 7 years ago by chance. If fate hadn't been so capricious back then, I would have become an empty, hateful
生
corpse.
き死にとは人の手の届かざるところだ。聖者は裏切られ刑に倒れ、万夫不当の英雄も流れ屋に死に、悪辣無道の罪人が一生を私服とともに生き延びて幕を引く。信仰者は神の公平を謳うが、それは公平に無関心ということだよ。人間が目に入った塵の形にいちいち気を回したりはしないように。もとより人とは罪と共に生きるもの。天の主が善なるものだというのなら、その目から見た人は等しく散りあくた。多少の罪の高など些細なものに違いない。
I don't know. That's an interesting perspective to look at it. I mean, I wouldn't think... I don't know. I don't really see God as someone who would be like looking down on us like that.
どこまでも人の世のものだ。死が理不尽というなら、それはこの世界が理不尽であるというそれだけのことだろう。
I mean, if we look at it this way, sometimes the death of something leads to the life of another. Like an animal dying can help feed another animal, right? Or an animal dying can help feed us. So in some ways, death can actually be good. I'm not saying that people dying is a good thing, but, you know, it seems like it's something that has to happen.
彼、花園の死もまた理不尽なのかな。
本人にとっては理不尽に違いない。死に値する罪人たちであれ、おとなしく裁きに服す者はごく稀だ。人は誰しも己を価値あると信じている。
I don't know how much he wants to say about this. I would be very suspicious of him talking in this much detail.
それで、彼は何者だったのだね。
父の帝黒船の古い知人さ。それほど親しくしていたわけでもないんだが、こんな死に方をするとさすがに気になるというわけだよ。
This is interesting because I don't think Kurofune and any of the other routes ever found out that Hanazono died.
さもありなんだ。
そろそろ僕は行くよ。空子も起きてくる頃だろう。
何かあればできる限り手を貸そう。
After giving me a half nod, Taigi walked towards the dorm. Shinuru Narita's identity remained hidden, but Taigi certainly suspected me. The moment when I was exposed seemed close at hand. Taigi suddenly turned around as if he'd forgotten something.
ところで、音無作のことだが。
Huh?
サクがどうかしたのかね。
Yeah, what about her?
死は思わぬところから訪れる。
Oh. Taigi Mikado spoke those words like a blackbird of ill omen, or a poet reading a tragedy.
それは噂に聞いた予言とやらか。帝大義。
それじゃ、僕は行くとするよ。
I do remember him giving predictions. Huh. Well, I wonder what that means for Saku. That's not good. Taigi left without ever giving me a proper answer. Had he warned me that Saku Otonashi was in danger? Regardless of it was a result of his halo or not, it meant the same thing. Saku had gotten too close to the darkness behind Mitori's disappearance. She stared into the abyss for far too long. Taigi didn't even have to warn me, since I already knew that. If I didn't stop Saku, her life was in danger.
あなたなら相手が竜でも虎でも挑むんでしょ。
clenched my hand a few times to get a better feel of it. Saku's heat from last night still lingered, reminding me of the graceful, dainty, fleeting girl. The small shoulders of hers supported the academy as a whole.
だが侍を止めるはガタシだ。
Saku Otonashi had stood up and acted out of consideration for her friend. Who stood a chance of halting such a noble act? The small clouds floating through the morning sky felt akin to tiny boats. Lunch seemed the same as ever. The advanced cafeteria at the academy appeared far more pristine than the one from Saku's previous school. Ooh, are we looking at her perspective right now? She looked around, the nostalgia mixed with the knowledge of the drastic changes in her life, and made her sigh. Unlike at her previous school, she didn't have to ask a friend to secure a spot, push through waves of people, or drop her shoulders after waiting in line and not getting what she wanted. The academy's cafeteria could serve the students even if all 200 of them showed up at the same time. Lunch was handled like a buffet, but you could ask for different menus, and the taste matched that at the best hotels in the world. When Saku had first arrived at the academy, there were so few students that you could count all of them on your fingers, and there were some buildings that were still under construction. The student cafeteria hadn't been built yet, so they had to use the one in the research building.
ここへ来てから3年と少しか。
Looking back on it, her days at the academy had resembled a glorious dream. Saku had assumed she had wandered into a paradise from a fairy tale. The princess had been afflicted with a sleeping curse, but then a prince on a white steed saved her with a kiss, and they lived happily ever after. This wasn't a fantasy, however, but a cruel reality. Saku and the other students were HMIs, abnormalities who had severe trouble fitting into the normal world. Many students had suffered severe wounds before they'd arrived at the academy. If not that, they were the ones who'd hurt someone. They all thought that within its walls they could escape their detestable past. Saku was no exception, however.
どうかしたのですか?
Ooh, I want to see more about how her relationship with Ero came to be, because Ero kind of mentioned it and saying that Saku kind of saved her and became her owner or whatever. I want to see how that came to be. Saku and Ero sat in the place in the cafeteria that stood out the most. The academy was designed in a manner that required the Etoilas to act as model students. Ero bent forward and looked directly at Saku's face.
心配事ですか? 空子のことですか?
Soriko Katsuragi had been called away that morning. Something had happened to her family, but neither Taigi, who knew the details, nor Tokino, the one responsible for the Etoiles, had said anything besides that. The fact that it was hidden from not only the regular students, but also the insignia herself meant that something very serious had happened. Before lunch, Tokino had sent out a message that Soriko would be resting for the time being. I thought Taigi was going to tell her and tell the rest of everybody there, because that's why he told us first, because he was planning on telling all of them. So I'm wondering why they didn't do that. It was very one-sided, and the simplicity of the text weighed Saku's chest down. I mean, it's probably already being weighed down quite a bit, but I mean, that's something Narita would say. It seemed to have power to crush and recolor everything, and it reminded her of a certain time in her past.
私たちがここで悩んでも仕方ないわ。時の先生がついているんだし、別にどこかに行ったわけじゃなくて、研究棟に移っただけだから。
Her heart felt restless. She tried to calm it down and maintain a normal face and voice. She hadn't been left behind yet.
そうですね。
Eru's lips moved as if she wished to say more, and Saku could see that she wanted to mention Mitori and that Soriko hadn't left them like she had.
エル、スクールに来てどれぐらいかな? もうすぐ3年です。あなたも古参の部類だもんね。
Saku awakened her old memories. When she first arrived at the academy, Eru had no control over her halo and acted much like a robot. After trying everything else she thought of to change that, Saku had finally decided to have her interact with some samples. She'd brought in many manga, novels, movies, anime, making her read and watch them, accompanying her every now and then. Out of those, Eru had digested a peculiar subculture, anime, light novels, etc., the simplest to understand, most likely due to the character archetypes and the like. The mechanical doll had crafted her own character like silk absorbed water.
エルもずいぶんおしゃべりになったわね。自分まだよくわかりません。自分のことが全部わかってるやつなんていないわよ。一番身近でも一番よくわからない。 そういうもの。少しずつやっていけばいいわ。最初はかっこいい妹にしちゃおうとか思ってたのよ。今考えてみると傲慢でバカみたいだけど。
The dazzling memories floating to the front of her mind made her rest her chin on her hands and confess that.
自分超かっこいいです。サクの妹分がこんなにかっこいいわけがない的な。
Is that supposed to be a reference to my little sister can't be this cute or something? Whatever it's called. Oriemo. That's what it is. Please don't be like that.
ほんと超いいわ。
The only good thing about that show, okay, is the opening, because the opening is fire.
サクが心配するのも当然です。最近はヤンキーめも身勝手行動をしてますし。
When the nostalgia dispersed, they returned to the main topic. Arrow wasn't too good at making expressions, but Saku knew she was mad.
そういうところがいいんだそうよ。
Arrow tilted her head like an owl, while Saku squinted her eyes as if she was thinking of something important.
成田が言ってたわ。一人で生きるのに向いたもの、そうでないもの、人はそれぞれだって。ありのままの彼女が一番美しい。
あの変態が言いそうなことです。
Yes, but hey, it sounded nice, okay?
そうね。
サク
Arrow tilted her head and thought again. She felt something off in Saku's words, but she couldn't put her finger on it. It passed by like a fleeting daydream. Then Saku looked the same as it ever once more.
エル、今夜私は時の先生とやることがあるから夕食はいいわ。先に寝ていて。
Ooh, having a meeting with Miss Tokino. That means we're about to have some interesting conversations.
わかりました。
Okay, let's just skip straight to that. I want to know. I want to know what she's going to talk about. Curious. Wonder if she's going to confront her about some stuff she's found out. She'd lied about that, of course. Tokino had called Saku for practical field examinations and negotiations with the outside quite often. Even putting that aside, Saku was the insignia of the crown, so no one had reasons to doubt her. Oh, she's doing one of these things again. Oh, dang, they're already talking about her freaking halo again. That's nice. Saku Otonashi's King Lear 3, her halo that allowed her to reign from the top of the academy, and a miracle as the researchers put it. Saku was stable as an HMI. Sometimes. However, that wasn't because her ability was complete. She simply had immense mental strength and processing power. In terms of processing power alone, not a single crown matched her. Due to that fact, she required more maintenance than anyone else. The regular measurements and checks were scheduled for twice a week. Most ended within 15 minutes, sure, but that was still more common than for the other etoiles. Those checks were necessary to make sure absolutely nothing happened to the miracle that was Saku Otonashi and her holy halo. That wasn't why Arrow had suspected a thing. That was why Arrow hadn't suspected a thing. Saku had lied to make sure that neither Arrow nor Tamao tried to involve themselves in her actions. They were already aware that something wasn't right with her and that she regularly snuck around the academy. But still, she didn't want to make them her accomplices. In a way, Soriko leaving the dorm had been a great boon. With Soriko gone, Saku no longer had to worry about her realizing the truth and trying to help her. Over the past few days, Saku had been poring over the data recorded in the reference room. Saku was a crown and thus had access to materials that were off limits to the normal students. However, she had no luck so far. Oh, so that's where she's going to get herself into trouble.
アクセスできるデータじゃダメ。本当に隠してあるとすれば研究棟か、それともローカルなデータベースか。何か方法を考えないと。
Mitori Kabutoyama had vanished, and in Saku's mind, that was impossible. She simply refused to believe that such a good friend had left without speaking a word to any of the crowns.
でもそれは
Tokino Yomase had informed them of Mitori's departure. If something had happened to Mitori, Tokino surely knew about it, which implied that
まさか時の先生がそんなそれこそありえない。
Tokino Yomase had been a core part of the academy since its founding. As a student from the early days, Saku felt relatively close to her. In her mind, Tokino Yomase was a venerable teacher who supported her and guided her through thick and thin. Saku wanted to believe both her and the academy. However, her suspicions didn't subside. In fact, they'd only grown stronger, bringing about a suffocating anxiety. The more she'd investigated over the past 2 weeks, the more her suspicions grew. Until recently, she never realized that the academy had been built on a certain and mysterious base. Though one didn't need to think too much to notice that. The sheer amount of wealth, power, and connections required to keep a place like Tenkawa Noble Academy afloat seemed ludicrous. Saku had merely avoided thinking about it. She let the paradise pamper her.
だけどもしかしたら
The academy wasn't a place that controlled the HMIs. It was a place that saw HMIs as possibilities, pioneers of the next generation, and taught them to be noble. Obviously, some had failed to keep up and left. And halos were sensitive things, so there were also those who had somehow lost them and thereby lost their place at the academy. What if Mitori was actually deeply troubled by something and spent her days without Saku ever noticing it? And due to that, Mitori left the academy.
違う、そんなことない。私たちは友達だった。何も言わずに黙って出て行ったりするなんて絶対ない。
Saku chose to believe in their friendship. Regardless of her reasons for living, Mitori would surely have said something. Saku didn't have any way to contact Mitori's family. She tried calling her repeatedly, but only reached a cold electronic voice that claimed her number was no longer in use.
自分で納得のいくまで調べる。でもこれ以上一体どこから手をつけたら。
If something had happened to Mitori, Tokino Yomase surely knew.
それは無理か。
Saku realized that Tokino would never answer no matter how much she asked, and even if she tried a more stealthy approach, the woman had no openings.
じゃあどうすれば。
Something fell from above. The metal fence slammed down like a giant guillotine. It had been installed on the school building's roof and spanned approximately 3 meters in every direction. Falling from such a height made it more than powerful enough to split a person in half. The sharp edges of the metal plates sliced through the wind as they fell, then gouged a chunk of concrete out of the ground. After the vacuous clatter, they bounced up and fell flat on the ground. It all happened in a single moment.
危ういところだったようだね、音無し作。
Saku Otonashi had survived. Shin Narita held her within his arms, and before that, a giant guillotine stretched across the ground. Okay, someone was trying to kill Saku? Hold up. Who would be out here trying to kill Saku? I felt a little too close for comfort. If he hadn't swooped in, the fence might have crushed Saku.
成田。
She gazed at me within my arms, not budging an inch. Her eyes displayed her confusion as she blinked over and over. It seemed her thoughts hadn't caught up to the situation. I felt no presences nearby. After confirming that we were safe, I put Saku down.
少しこの場を動かないように。
I kicked off the wall and ran up to the roof. I'd accomplished such a feat due to a method of body control called Chip Kali, or King Kwang, in Chinese martial arts. With precise weight management, control of their center of gravity, and enough speed, any person could use vertical walls as a foothold. Next, I used the school building's eaves, the windows' dents, and the ceilings of the grand staircase.
誰もいないか。
An empty rooftop showered in solemn moonlight. The cold light mixed with the modern pale building made me believe I was at the bottom of the Dead Sea. I merely managed to find empty air. The roof was off limits to students, so the door always remained locked. Even if you ignored that, it was late at night, so there was no way anyone could have been there. In order to be certain, I checked the fence. It seemed to be fixed in place and reinforced. The likelihood of all the things holding it breaking and letting it fall was about as high as pigs flying.
スクールは数年前に開設されたばかり。建物もほとんど新築同然。老朽化による事故の線もあるまい。となると、よほどの手だれの仕業か、それとも痕跡を残す心配のない手段を用いたか。
I mean, there is a lot of HMIs at the school. Had the fence falling been an attack against Saku? A warning. No, it was far too rough for that. If something went wrong. No, if I hadn't arrived in time, things would have ended badly for Saku. If the insignia of the crowns got caught up in an accident, the academy as a whole would have been thrown into utter disarray. Was even that acceptable to the one responsible? Had Saku dug too deep already? The whole situation didn't make much sense to me, so I decided to return to Saku. She was surely in a state of shock, which made leaving her alone a bad idea. I traveled down the wall and found her sitting down exactly where I'd left her. She looked as pale as a broken mannequin.
Saku, 大丈夫かね?
Probably not. I whispered into her ear. She didn't react until my third attempt.
質問は後にしてくれたまえ。まずはこの場を離れよう。自分で立てるかね?
大丈夫。これぐらい。
She tried to get up but simply collapsed onto her behind like her joints were broken.
あれ変だな。足、まっすぐならない。
Saku appeared to be in a state of panic. She had lost control of both her emotions and body, and I couldn't blame her since she'd almost died.
手を貸そう。
I picked her up without giving her any time to resist. She couldn't stand, so carrying her seemed far quicker and simpler than letting her get on my back.
安全なところまで移動する。構わないかね?
Hey, it's just like we did with Tamao. Dang, going back to our room, huh?
安全な場所ってここのことなの?
I'm pretty sure that Narita has brought every single girl back to his room at some point. What a player. But now he's doing it with Saku, who's the insignia of the school. I don't think that's very noble of her. Saku sat down on the bed, not knowing what to do with her hands, so she embraced the green round plush toy. She looked around like a child brought to an amusement park for the very first time. The way she did made her seem restless. The safe place I mentioned was none other than my own room in the dorm.
この部屋の安全は一応保証しよう。どう安全であるのか詳しく説明できないのが残念だ。
大げさ。
Still holding onto the plush toy, she opened her eyes wide like a little girl.
だいたい成田の部屋ってのがすでに危険地帯だし。
Yeah, boy's room is pretty dangerous, huh?
多少は落ち着いたようで何よりだ。それはともかく、私の部屋はそれほど面白いのかね？
いや、珍しいっていうか、男の子の部屋とか初めてだから。
Well, I hate to tell you, you're in one of the worst rooms in the whole house, and every other girl's been in here. Probably Taigi at some point too, let's be honest. Well, I certainly hadn't had the pleasure of a proper visit from her either. She'd entered my room before, but perhaps the morning when she'd collapsed at the entrance for some reason embarrassed her.
備え付け以外で増えた強度は PC 程度だよ。殺風景ではあるが、部屋は持ち主の鏡だ。私の部屋であるここは、気品において、かのタージマハルに勝るとも劣らぬだろう。
どっちかっていうと、香港空論城？
それもまたよしだ。
I handed her a metal mug as she took it with both hands.
入れたばかりだ。取っ手の部分以外は相当に熱い。
先に言いなさい。
I made the coffee myself. After tasting it once, Saku slowly began drinking it.
昨夜も思ったのだが、熱いのは苦手かね？
ちょっとだけ。別に猫舌ってわけじゃないけど。
筆頭殿には意外に可愛げのあるところが多いな。
She's definitely a quirky girl, I'll say that.
何言ってんだか。このコーヒー、変な味じゃない？
She made a weird expression as she stuck out her tongue. It was as though she wanted to say that it was bad, but decided against it. Oh, well, thank you for being considerate of our feelings.
名前は知らない。アフリカでとある老人からもらったものだ。もう残り少ないが、独特の味わいがある。
A certain old man, huh? I wonder who that could be.
ただの期限切れなんじゃ。
I waited until she finished half of her mug and calmed down, then spoke up.
何があったのか覚えているかね？
The shock from before returned, making her brace her shoulders and shiver. It was a reaction you'd expect from a normal girl, not the great insignia. The day I first met her, she maintained a cool facade in the face of a barrel of a gun. However, perhaps that recent incident felt more shocking because she hadn't expected it to have her life endangered within the academy's walls.
あれ一体何が？
校舎屋上のフェンスの一部が外れて落下した。危ういところを私が助けた。一歩遅れていれば大惨事になっていたかもしれない。
That was all thanks to Taigi warning me and keeping an eye on Saku as a result. I might not have made it if he hadn't told me.
でもここの屋上のフェンスなんて普通外れるわけないわ。あんなものがどうして？
I mean, that's a pretty good observation. Fences don't usually just fall by themselves. I wonder what could have happened. The true nature of every person revealed itself when they were tested. Saku looked straight ahead. The remnants of fear had turned her into a meek squirrel, yet she wished to face the truth. I saw a strong will in her eyes. Humans were frail. She was no exception in that regard, but she had what it took to change the world. She was the noble bearer of a mark owned by only those who dared to face cruelty and tragedy head on.
どうやら先ほどの出来事は事故ではないようだ。
I realized lies and tricks were going to work on her, so I told her the truth, bringing reason and vitality back to her.
事故じゃないってどういうこと？
She appeared so enchanting. Saku Otonashi was an individual who turned the fact that she was in a dire straits into the power needed to stand tall.
そのままだ。何者かが君を狙った。おそらくは警告。しかし、やり方は相当ずさん。まるで素人。手違いがあっても構わなかっただけかもしれないが。
待って何よそれは。そんなこと突然言われてもどうして私が警告なんて。
心当たりはないのかね。
あるわけな。
She stopped mid-sentence and froze. Of course she knew. Saku sought the truth surrounding Mitori's death. She had approached the dark underbelly of the academy, the lair of the dragon.
これ以上深入りするな。サク、相手はそう言っている。 残念ながらこれについては私も同じ意見だ。
深入り？そんな、まさかそれって。
I hate to tell you, if she knows that it goes deeper than this, she's gonna keep pursuing it.
スクールのことを調べるのはやめたまえ。今度は本当に命を落とすだろう。
でもそんなこと。私はただ、ミトリがどうして突然いなくなったのか、その理由を知りたくて。
I'll say you want to know, and the academy doesn't want you to know.
ミトリがどうなったのかを教えれば納得するかね。
知ってるの成田。一体どうやって調べたの？私の権限で調べても何もわからなかったのに。
学園の外につてがあるとだけ言っておこう。兜山ミトリは病死している。この学園を離れてすぐ。兜山家では葬儀も終わっているはずだ。
Saku found herself at a loss for words, and rightfully so. Yeah, I'd be pretty shocked if I found out my friend died when they just suddenly left the academy. She didn't insist that I was lying. She instantly understood that my words contained no sense of evasion, excuses, or pretense. A close friend of hers had left the world. Faced with a truth that she might have expected at some point, Saku dropped her shoulders.
また追いつけなかった。ミトリ。
She wept, seemingly concealing her sobbing. The truth she'd been seeking was a cruel one, but if that was what it took to make her give up, I had no other choice.
成田真理は音無し策をこの件に深入りさせたくないと思っている。
How unlike me. Normally I would have prioritized her will and determination above all else. Why did I so desperately wish for her to remain out of harm's way? I'd even used underhanded tactics to get my way. I failed to find an answer no matter how hard I tried, but I knew that I didn't want her to dance with death in vain. To seek the truth behind Mitori's disappearance was to approach the heart of the academy. and to Saku Otonashi, the academy was a sacred place she wished to believe in. The actual truth did not matter, since it was such an important place to her. All of that was grounded in the relationship between Kurofune and I. Shinri Narita would have had his revenge, and that would have surely destroyed the tiny paradise. Saku Otonashi would then realize that the man that they believed in was the source of the epidemic that infected their haven. She would know that it was an enemy who destroyed that which she wished to protect.
それでいい。
The only one who deserved to be cursed in that scenario was Shinri Narita, the man driven mad by his lust for revenge. The hope she believed in didn't deserve to be damaged. I saw the will in her eyes that convinced me that she wouldn't lose herself to hatred and would restore the sanctuary after it had withered. That was why this girl, who loved the academy and wished to protect it for herself and her friends more than anyone else, didn't have to be involved in this matter. I don't know, isn't that kind of contradictory though? Like, if she's trying to protect the academy, but the academy is also the reason why Mitori died, in a sense, you know? I wonder if she finds out the truth, if she's still gonna want to protect the academy, or if she's gonna be able to change it in some way. Saku spoke up the moment I'd finished thinking.
嫌よ。
Her voice was silent but resolute.
何が嫌なのだね。
ニトリがもういないとしても、私は最後までやり遂げる。いえ、もう彼女のことだけじゃない。今何が起こっているのか、真実を確かめない限り、私は止まらない。
状況をありていに言うなら、すでに君がどうにかできる範疇を超えている。エトワールとはいえ、君は所詮一階の学生に過ぎないのだよ。
私が一階の学生なら、成田はどうなの？
私にはなすべきことがある。そのためにここへ来た。そのための覚悟を持っている。その覚悟は君が踏み込むべきではないところだ。
踏み込むべきではないときたか。
ついさっき君は命を落としかけた。これ以上踏み込めば、いずれさらなる悲劇と苦難が現れる。世界は残酷な神の手のひらの上だ。不幸だけが万人に等しく訪れる。ささやかな仁義と幸運でそれに立ち向かうのがこの人の世の真実だ。次も今回のように九死に一生を得られるとは限らない。遅かれ早かれ君は命を落とすだろう。その覚悟があるのかね。君が踏み込もうとしているところは君個人だけにはとどまらない。音無し策を必要とする大勢の嘆きと涙を振り切って、それでも進むべき価値のある場所なのか。
I used as many words as I could think of to make her reconsider. I almost laughed at how comical it seemed, but I continued trying to convince her against this course of action. Nobility, courage, friendship, those were all exceedingly beautiful faces of mankind. However, nobility and pride were unneeded beyond that point. The stage ahead was ugly and had no room for what made humans truly human. Oh, but
だから、
I already knew that such troubles held no hope of swaying Saku Otonashi.
なぜそうまで行こうとする。
I lost all logical means of trying to stop her. The fact that I'd been unable to prevent her from swearing to keep moving forward felt truly frustrating. Despite that, however, there was a smile on my face. I truly wasn't myself.
なぜとあなたが尋ねるの？何度もあなたが言った通りよ。私は、音無し策は、クラウンのインシグニアだもの。
Okay, let's freaking go, Saku. You're ready. Let's freaking find out all the secrets of the Academy. Even the ones we haven't found out in other routes. I want to find out them all. She rose to her feet with enough energy to make a light wind. That alone made me imagine a golden crown on her head and fluttering cloak of deep crimson flowing behind her. I failed to peel my eyes off of her. Saku Otonashi was beautiful, not just in appearance, but in her very nature. She shined even brighter than she had when I first met her, so I couldn't help but be dazzled.
音無し策は、スクールの秩序と正義を担うもの。正しからざる行いを正すべき、権利と義務を持ったもの。だから、行かねばならない。人々の藩として。
Alright, I
私は
like it.
この学園の剣であり盾、秩序の名においてここにいる罪なき同胞を守る。そして正義の名においてミトリが消えた理由を確かめずには置かない。
Dang, this is the freaking Saku we've deserved all game.
それがたとえこの学園の意志に歯向かうことを意味していてもかね。
ええ、
Heck yeah, that's what I wanted to hear, baby. A short yet powerful response. It's a freaking great response. It's the correct one.
相手がこのスクールそのものであろうと変わらない。そこに過ちがあるなら正してみせる。
秩序とは普遍ではなく誰かの手で与えられるものだ。学園の正義を定めるのは学園自身だろう。それが君の望む正義と乖離していようとも。
それなら自分の信じるところを進むわ。
The clarity of her words and the lack of hesitation made me gasp. Saku was the Japanese word for the nights of the new moon, when the sun and the moon aligned at opposite sides of the sky. The moon was beautiful and its light was that of the sun. As such, during new moons, the light never reached the world. Thus, Saku was true darkness, the deepest black. Even on a night without any light, people had to keep moving forward, and that was exactly how Saku was.
恐れないのかね、おとなしさく。
She decided to challenge the academy, which was one with the justice and order of the world she lived in. Occasionally, people had to fight against what they loved. That was simultaneously the most cruel and precious form of the human will.
足が震えるほど怖いに決まってる。ついさっき死にそうになったばかりなのよ。だからなおのこと、こんなところで立ち止まれない。
Well, Saku, I'm gonna be honest. If anyone besides us can do it, you can do it.
知らないふりをしてしまえば楽だと思う。でもそうしたら他の誰かがまたミトリみたいになるかもしれない。目を閉じている間に他の誰かに置いていかれてしまう。それを止められたかもしれないって後悔する。だから行くの。
She spoke of what was right while in the depths of hell. What an astounding contradiction. None of what she believed in had any power. She knew that she had no backing if she faced the academy as a whole, but even so, Saku Otonashi didn't plan to stop. That meant she believed not in justice or order, but something far greater. I was certain that such firm beliefs were the very root of humanity.
勇気とは恐れを知らぬ人間ではなく恐れを克服する人間だか。
何？
つまりさく、君はこういうのだね。この世界の正しさを打倒すると。まるで神話の英雄のようにだ。しかし君では随分と役者が不足だな。
それは
異端の力は英雄の印ではない。それは人ではないという、つまりは怪物の証だ。君の手に伝説の武器はなく、背に翼もなく、地に足をつけて這うように進むほかない。
People who challenged the world itself were pitifully powerless, but that was why.
だからこそ、君は神話の万倍も億倍も気高く美しいのだと思う。
成田。
古い物語を知っているかね。世界を滅ぼす指輪の呪いから人間と世界を解き放ったのは、あまたの英雄でも勇者でも賢者でもなく、最も小さく勇敢なものだった。
Is it supposed to be Lord of the Rings he's referencing?
人は意志を持って恐怖を踏破するとき、真に人間となる。いいだろう、サク。では、行くとしよう。
Alright, where are we going? Freaking, I want to go in the belly of the dragon beast. I extended my hand towards her. Saku looked at it, then stared at her face. Her eyes widened and she blinked as though she didn't understand
こ
me.
れってそのどういう、つまりあなたも手伝ってくれる？
Of course we'll help you, Saku. You're like the third best girl.
私は音無しサクに嘘はつきたくない。 だから先にはっきりさせておこう。私には私のなすべきことがある。あらゆるものと引き換えにしてもそれはなさねばならない。成田真理の第一はそれだ。君を手伝うわけにはいかない。だが今はたまたま向かうべき道が同じになった。スクールの真実にたどり着く途中まで共に行くのは嫌かね。
Freaking Narita.
おとなしさく。
Don't start this crap again.
ううんありがとう。
Still perplexed, Saku took my hand. It couldn't even be called a cooperation agreement since we merely agreed to walk as one for a short time.
私は私のために行くのだよ。礼には及ばない。
あなたのなすべきことって何？やっぱりこのスクールに関係があるの？
Saku, you're smart. You can figure it out. I fell silent, making Saku lightly panic.
ごめんなさい。聞いちゃダメだったなら。
You know, I'll take your consideration. I appreciate that.
まだ話せない。
そう。
だがいつか教えよう。その時が来れば。
Though that had to wait until I actually did what I had to do. Shinrin Narita had returned to enact revenge in a way that he'd appeared to destroy the academy. What would Saku Otonashi do once she knew that? Through the window, the academy looked peaceful, oblivious to the sadness and filth enveloping society. The many students on campus were completely unrelated to Shinrin Narita's revenge tragedy. They'd merely taken the stage through no fault of their own. The path Saku and I walked never had a chance of becoming one. They were merely aligned. The wisdom of old was most correct. Hatred was the mother of more hatred. What was lost would never return, and revenge would only spread anger and more hatred like a virus. Hatred broke through reason and seared the body. It was a chain that binded everything to the past. But even so, I had to accomplish my goal. The cost of my blood, flesh, or soul be damned. Could a man truly remain human if he forewent righteous indignation? To have a fresh start, I had to settle the score and part with my past. If I didn't drop the curtain that raised 7 years ago, I had no means of moving to the next stage. I was fine even if the bloody path of vengeance only led me to a scorched wasteland, since this new seeds could only grow within the ash.
サク。
どうかしたの？
いや。
おかしなやつ。
Hey! You be nice. She would learn eventually. She would learn that the Shinrin Narita she'd gazed at had been an inhuman avenger all along. Heck yeah. Let's freaking go.
あんなサーカスみたいな真似して学園の外へ抜け出してまで一体何をするのかと思えば。
Yeah, because I needed to introduce third best girl to first best girl, okay? You might be in the insignia of the crowns and of the school, right? But she's the insignia of the world. She is the model maid. I'd used the path I'd already charted to carry Saku through the security layer. It was almost time for the moon to descend. The country road some distance away from the academy appeared completely barren.
改めて紹介しよう。菱谷森。私に仕える優秀な次女だ。
マジ久しぶりでございます。石谷、ご主人の顔は見飽きておりますが、
Hey.
おとなし様とこんな形で再会できるとは思っておりませんでした。
Just because you're best girl doesn't mean you gotta insult me like that, okay?
では菱谷、これの分析を頼む。
承知いたしました。何それは？
君がペペロンチーノになりかけた現場の付近を調査して発見した頭髪だ。あるいは警告した何者かの正体を探る手がかりになるかもしれない。
I'd found it on the barren rooftop, meaning that it likely belonged to the culprit.
そんなのがあったなら先に言いなさいよ。
どのみち学園内で調べるわけにはいかないのでね。
スクールには200人からの HMI がいるのよ。中には調べるのが得意な。あ、そうか。
Yeah, we don't know who's on our side. Probably not very many, if any.
その通り。 それでは黒船、学園側に筒抜けだ。まして巻き込んだ相手の安全も保証できなくなってしまう。
思ったよりも頭使ってるんだ。
私はいついかなる時も常人の3倍で頭を使っているとも。得意技は頭突きだ。
How do you cut with a headbutt? What?
やっぱりこいつ
Sometimes.
バカ。
Sometimes Saku he is. Not all the time, but sometimes.
ご主人様は幼少時の辛い記憶のせいで電波になってしまわれたのです。主に頭脳的な面で。
Wow, you're really gonna give away that much information, huh?
ヒシアさんでいいのかしら。あなた事情を知ってるってことなの？ヒシアとお呼びください、おとなし様。
No. You don't get to call her Hisha. You call her best girl, okay? Because you need to know your place.
シアは私の味方だ。もちろん何もかも承知している。
そういうことか。成田は最初から別の目的があってこの学園に入り込んだのね。それがあなたのなすべきこと。なるほど。
アンサーはまたの機会としよう。さて、頼んだぞ、ヒシア。
承知いたしました。ご主人様もせいぜい足を踏み外されぬよう。
あちらの件も進めてくれ。
はい、万事滞りなく。成田のやつ、一体何を考えて。
You know, I'd like to imagine that Hishia is an HMI as well and has the ability, like kind of like reading Steiner, to remember every single route that we've gone through. And it's just like, wow, Narita, you've just been with so many different girls. Like, literally, I'm meeting all of them outside the school. And you're just sitting here, you know, pretending not to know what's going on. And you're not giving them the information that, about what your plan is, and then they end up seeing that you end up killing all these people and they get mad because they're like, no, that's a terrible idea. You know, that's what I'd like to believe happens. You know, Hishia is just a loyal maid. I like that Saku's not gonna like BS. She's just gonna like ask us, hey, what's your true intentions, by the way? Not gonna beat around a bush. I can respect that. As Hishia left, Saku closed in on me, bearing her will to find out what she wanted. I felt flames burn me.
成田は何の目的でここに来たの？
理事長に招かれエトワールとなるためだ。それ以上は言えないと言わなかったかね。
I closed one eye as though caught in mischief. She clearly didn't like that and squinted at me.
学園に歯向かう真似をする君が今さら私の意図を気にする必要はないだろう。
バカ、気にするに決まってる。私はエトワール、クラウンの筆頭。この学園を守る者。あなたは学園に歯向かうと言ったけど、それは違う。この学園を正すために真実が欲しいだけ。私はスクールを愛してる。間違いがあるなら正してみせるし、過ちを犯したなら償わせてみせる。誰かがここに悪意を向けてくるのなら、この私が盾になってみせる。
Maybe I shouldn't tell you what my plans are then. You're not gonna like them. Her instant echoing response felt pleasant. No matter what path she took, her love for the academy and awareness of her status as an Etwala were unshaken.
だからもう一度だけ聞くわ。成田真理、あなたの目的は何？それが学園に災いをもたらすなら、私は捨てておけない。
Well, you caught me. I'm like the Suicide Squad. I'm here to wreak havoc, okay? That was exactly what she couldn't ignore, the ominous shadow overshadowing Narita.
正すと言ったな。
ええ、言った。
私もそうだ。私もかつて犯された過ちを正したい。それがこの学園に来た目的だ。
言ってる意味がよくわからないわ。
Probably best you don't.
これが今話せる最大限だ。
We looked straight at each other. Our unshakable wills clashed and caused sparks. It felt both long and short, and I was the first to look away, for I decided to take her hand as I once had and touch her fingers with my lips.
音無し作、君は美しいよ。
That she is.
何？
That she is.
本心だ。見目形ではなく、あり方が強く気高い。
ごまかさないで。それに私はそんな褒められる人間じゃないわ。
挫折を知っているからかね。見ていればわかることもある。目は口ほどに物を言うと以前言ったかな。ある意味それは本当だ。音無し作はこの学園という花壇から芽吹いた大輪ではなく、野原で咲いた一輪だ。容赦ない風雨の辛さを、雪降る冬の冷たさを、荒れ狂う嵐の暴威を知っている。それでも君はここにいて、まっすぐな瞳で私を見る。ここが正常な楽園ではないと知っても、クラウンとしてスクールを守りたいと胸を張る。
Yeah, I do think that's pretty noble of her. Like, she realizes the academy has flaws, but she realizes that she still is the crown, and that she still is the insignia, and that she needs to stand up for the beliefs, even if the school itself isn't.
私なら無ビューな黄金の輝きよりも、火の中で何度も打たれて生まれた鋼のきらめきにこそ価値を見出すだろう。君のように。
So Narita values something that was forged and crafted, you know, that had effort put into it, rather than something that was just naturally beautiful without any work.
そんな買いかぶらないで。
では分かりやすく、君に好意を持っていると言おう。だから音無し作を死なせたくないというのは、一緒に行動する理由としては不足かね。
好意って、それはその。
That was a little sweet moment between them. I like that. I like that. It feels like it's kind of continuing the common route a bit. I feel like they were kind of developing something for a while. And then obviously him and Soriko as well. But I think Saku is technically supposed to be in the main ship. So I like that we're finally getting onto this route. I feel like it's very interesting. And we're also learning a lot more about Saku's intentions with the academy. It's a very big departure from how she was at the start of the game, where it feels like she didn't want to question anything about the academy, and now it feels like she's questioning everything, and she's questioning us too, which is nice. Because I feel like it's gonna end up causing some interesting drama. I'll say that. But I'm gonna end the video here. I think this is a good stopping point. We've done probably what? Yeah, we've done a little over 2 hours, so I think that's a good way to start off her route. I'm definitely looking forward to it. It's been good so far. You know, it's obviously every route has a few small moments where it's a little bit slower, but interesting stuff going on so far. And I feel like there's going to be just way more that's going to happen pretty soon. So I'm excited about that. But anyways, guys, hope you are enjoying this, and I am going to see you guys in the next episode.